Onama burst into loud laughter. Hey! Wait, Mwabife. You see me, Onama, in your dreams. Let me understand something. Are you telling me that the same eyes that you used to spot antelopes, monkeys, and rats in the bush are the same eyes you are using to see me too? Hey, Onama, you have suffered. Once upon a time, there was a big and beautiful African village. It was sitting high on the hills of Achina, looking down at all other villages like a god on his throne. The name of this village was Ohiri. Because Ohiri was built on a hill, they did not have many rivers like the other villages down in the valley. But the gods had done something very special for them. They gave Ohiri a huge rock. A rock so big that it was hard to imagine. From this rock, fresh, clean water flowed out like magic. The water did not just stop there. It moved and spread out, forming big rivers all over the land. And these rivers were filled with fish, both big and small. It was a wonder to behold. People came from far places just to see the mighty rock of Ohiri. But there was something strange about this water. No matter how hard you tried, you could never take the water out of the village. If you fetched the water and walked out of Ohiri, it would disappear from your pot, calabash, or even your hands. Anything at all you fetch this water with. Just like that. Every 4 Ekemaki days, the people of Ohiri held a big celebration. They would sing, dance, and thank the god of the rock who had blessed them with the miracle water. On these days, people from other villages would come to Ohiri to join the feast and witness the wonder of the mighty rock. The rock of Ohiri was truly something great. But then, this story is not really about that rock, although it plays an important role in what happened. In the heart of Ohiri lived a very wealthy man. His name was Ibago. He was a powerful man. Because of his wealth, he was close to the king, and they often sat together, laughing and drinking palm wine from the same calabash. Ibago had 3 wives, and between them, they gave him 15 sons. The people of the village respected him, and many men wished to be like him. He was proud of his healthy sons. But even with all his wealth and 15 sons, Ibago was not fully happy. What he wanted the most to feel complete was a daughter. After the birth of his 6th son, he started praying to the gods. He offered sacrifices and begged them to bless him with just one girl. But each time, the answer was the same: another son. However, he kept hoping. But by the time his wives had given him 15, still he had no daughter. Ibago did not give up. He went ahead and married the 4th wife. And this time, the gods answered his prayers. He gave birth to a beautiful baby girl and named her Onama, which means beautiful gold. Her birth was the talk of the whole village. Ibago was so happy that he threw a massive celebration. Goats and cows were killed, food and drinks flowed like water, and music filled the air. If a stranger had walked into the village that day, they would have thought it was a royal wedding. The people ate, drank, and danced until they were tired. Some even carried food home, enough to feed their whole families for 3 solid days. For the first time in a long time, Ibago felt complete. He looked at his baby girl and smiled, knowing that the gods had finally answered his deepest heart's desire. As Onama grew older, she became like her father's handbag. Chief Ibago took her everywhere he went. He loved her so much and gave her everything money could buy. If Onama wanted something, she got it, no matter the cost. From the time she was a little girl till she became a young woman, Onama never did any work. She never lifted her fingers to do any single thing. Her father made sure that he provided her with servants who did everything for her, cooked her food, washed her clothes, cleaned her room, and even helped her wear her clothes and jewelry. All Onama had to do was eat, sleep, and look beautiful. The other wives of Ibago, including Onama's own mother, complained all the time. They did not like the way he spoiled her. But anytime they said anything, Ibago would raise his hand and say, "She is a princess, my princess, and she must be treated as one." As Onama became a young woman, she turned into a beauty that people admired. Her skin glowed like gold. Her waist was tiny and her eyes sparkled like stars. But her beauty made her proud, lazy. She believed no one was good enough to stand beside her. She looked down on everyone, especially those she felt were not rich or beautiful enough. Ibago encouraged this behavior. He would say to her, "My precious gold, you are too special. The man who will marry you first must have twice the wealth I have. You will never suffer in life, my daughter. I, Ibago, will make sure you marry only the best." These words filled Onama's head even the more, and she carried herself, spreading her shoulders like an overfed peacock. But sadly, Chief Ibago did not live long enough to keep his promise. One day, he fell sick, and just like that, he died. It was a very hard time for Onama. She cried and cried, felt like a part of her had died with her father. No matter how much her mother tried to comfort her, she refused to be consoled. But even after his death, Onama's behavior did not change. It got worse. She still acted proud and full of herself. A few years passed, and Onama became ripe for marriage. Many young men came from far and near to ask for her hand, but Onama turned every single one of them down. And not in a quiet manner, lie. She did it in the most shameful and embarrassing ways. The first man to try was Obiora, a humble palm wine tapper. He had always admired Onama from afar, and even though he was not rich, he came with hope, the hope that Onama would perhaps consider him and be his wife. He brought her gifts, fine wrappers, coral beads, and a large calabash of fresh palm wine. He came with his people. Onama's eldest brother, who now stood in their father's place, was the one to welcome them, and afterwards called her to come out and greet her suitor. Onama walked in like a queen. Her shoulders were high, her nose in the air. She looked at Obiora from head to toe, then at the gifts on the ground. Her face changed. With a loud voice, she said, "Do I look like someone who would even be seen with the likes of you, Obiora? You, a poor, miserable palm wine tapper. And these cheap things you brought, these beads and wrappers, they may look good on one of my servants or one of those low-class village girls you people always chase. Me, Onamaloma, the daughter of the great chief Ibago, cannot even be buried in these items. The gods forbid." The whole room went silent. Everyone was shocked. Her brothers, her mother, and the elders present did not know what to say. Even the breeze seemed to stop blowing. Obiora's face hardened and fell. He picked up his gifts slowly, his hands shaking. He had never been so humiliated in his life. His people followed closely behind him quietly, and they left Ibago's compound, ashamed and deeply embarrassed. After Obiora, then came byVee. byVee, the most popular hunter in Ohiri. He was known not only in his village, but even in other villages where he went to hunt. byVee was handsome, very handsome, young, hardworking. He always returned from the forest with the biggest animals, and the villagers admired his strength and bravery. The young girls in Ohiri admired him too. Many of them wished he would notice them, but byVee had eyes only for one girl, Onama. He had loved her right from when they were children, and now that they were grown, he did not even have the courage to tell her how he felt. Then one day, while on a hunting trip in a faraway forest, byVee killed a very big deer. It was the biggest he had ever caught. As he stood there looking at the animal, he smiled to himself, thinking of how much money he would make from selling it. But then, almost immediately, he remembered Onama. It was as though her name was whispered in his ears. And right there, he started thinking, maybe I should give this to Ona. He said to himself, I cannot wait to see the smile on her face. And finally, she will realize the way I feel about her. The decision made so much sense to him, and very happily he carried the deer home, took a bath, wore one of his finest clothes, and made his way to Ibago's compound, hoping to impress the girl of his dreams. Luckily, when he arrived, Onama was outside, sitting under the big okwa tree, making her hair. Her servants surrounded her, helping her comb and decorate her hair with beads. When Onama saw byVee, she frowned. byVee, this one you are here. I hope all is well. My brothers are not back from the farm yet. But byVee smiled and dropped the bear before her. I have not come to see your brothers, Onama, he said. I came to see you. I brought this special bushmeat for you. I knew you would like it. Onama did not smile. Her face stayed the same. She looked him from head to toe. And why would you bring me bushmeat, Nwabuife? She asked sharply. Do I look hungry? Are we friends? Are we family? What is the meaning of this? Nwabuife took a deep breath. He decided it was time to speak from his heart. I know we are not friends, Onama, he began. But I will not lie to you. I have always admired you. I have loved you since we were children. I see you in my dreams. And when I'm awake, every time I see you, my heart skips 1,000 beats. Suddenly, Onama burst into loud laughter. She clapped her hands together, mocking him. Hey! Wait, Nwabuife. You see me, Onama, in your dreams. Let me understand something. Are you telling me that the same eyes that you used to spot antelopes, monkeys, and rats in the bush are the same eyes you are using to see me too? Hey, Onama, you have suffered. Wonders shall never end. Nwabuife looked confused. Did I say anything wrong? He asked, still holding on to hope. Yes, she shouted. You said and did everything wrong. Nwabuife, listen to me and listen very, very well. In fact, hold your ears as I'm speaking to you. I am not your type. You and all these poor, small boys in Ohere are far below me. I cannot bring myself so low. It's only in those dreams of yours that you can come close to me. So keep on dreaming. Carry your bushmeat to the other hungry village girls. They will be happy to have you. In fact, I heard that Chinwe, the blacksmith's daughter, likes you. Go and give it to her. I'm sure she's hungry enough to accept it. Nonsense. Nwabuife looked down at himself in shock. Then at the deer lying at his feet. He turned to the servants who were giggling quietly as they continued to braid Onama's hair. Shame nearly killed him. In fact, shame tied him rapper. Without saying another word, he picked up his deer and walked away quietly from Chief Ibago's compound. His heart was heavy and his face showed so much pain. Nwabuife had never been so insulted and humiliated in his entire life. Then again came Ifenna. His father was a rich farmer, just like Chief Ibago had been. But even though his family was well known and comfortable, their wealth was still not enough for Onama. But then, Ifenna was determined to settle with someone from a high-class family, and so he carried his 2 left legs and went all the way to Onama. Sadly, that decision became one of the biggest embarrassments of his life. When Ifenna visited, Onama did not treat him badly at first. She welcomed him with a soft smile, and he felt hopeful. In fact, he felt confident that he was going to hit it. But what he did not know was that Onama was only pretending to be nice. In her mind, she had already made her decision. Ifenna politely shared his intentions. Onama suddenly started to ask him strange questions. It was as though she was interviewing him for a job. Ifenna, she asked, let me just ask, how many acres of land does your father own? She asked, tilting her head like a queen. Ifenna smiled, proud of his family's achievements. Well, my father owns over 50 acres of rich farmland, he said. But Onama rolled her eyes. My father owned over 150 acres. She crossed her arms and asked again, and how many cows do you have or plan to inherit? Ifenna scratched his head a little. Well, we don't have cows, but we have goats, plenty goats, over 100 goats and rams. Onama shook her head slowly, as if she was pitying him. Chai. Yeah. Well, my family owns over 500 cows, 1,000 goats, and more than 2,000 rams. So tell me, Ifenna, how do you plan to use that small business you and your family run to take care of me? Then she turned around slowly, her waist swaying like a dancer. Just take a look at me. Onamaloma, the most beautiful maiden in all of Oheri, the only precious daughter of the great chief Ibago. Do you really think I would be so foolish as to settle for poverty? Ifenna stood, his mouth slightly open. He could not believe what he was hearing. What kind of insult is this, Onama? My family is not poor, and I will not stand here and let you insult us like this. But Onama only laughed. But you are poor. Any man whose family's total wealth does not even reach 1/3 of what my father left behind is poor. I mean, what was your father doing when his mates were making money? Ifenna shook his head in anger. One day, Onama, you will look back and regret all this. And trust me, when that day comes, you will be all alone. And with that, he turned and walked away. And that was it. That was the last time a man came close to Onama. Stories of the way she ridiculed her suitors started flying all over the village. The young men stayed away from her completely. No one wanted to be embarrassed, of course. Onama had only one friend, and that was Adaeze, the daughter of the king. Onama believed Adaeze was the only one worthy enough to come close to her. They spent time together, talked about everything, and shared numerous secrets. One day, Adaeze sat with Onama under the same okwa tree in her compound. She was worried. Onama, she called her friend gently. Onama, you should start considering marriage. Some of these men that come to you are good men. Look at byVee, for instance. He's fine, and he's hardworking, and he can take care of you. You should accept one of them. Onama shook her head proudly and replied, They are all beneath me, Adaeze. Not a single man in all of Oheri is good enough for me. None of them deserves me. Adaeze, look at me now. Am I not beautiful? And then you expect me to just settle down for one of those poverty-stricken things? They don't deserve me. Adaeze looked at her in surprise. So tell me, Onama, what exactly are you looking for? That was when Onama smiled. She sat up and began to adjust herself as she listed her requirements. Number 1, he must be very handsome, like a prince. He must be richer than my father ever was. He must own many lands in different villages. He must have hundreds of servants to take care of my needs. You know, I don't like to suffer. He must bring me the best clothes and jewelry from faraway lands. He must build me a house finer than the king's palace. He must treat me like a queen every single day. As Onama went on and on, Adese's mouth slowly opened in shock. Onama. Onama, now tell me, where will you find such a man? In Oheri or even in this whole world? Onama smiled. Don't worry, Adese. When my time comes, all of you will see. My father told me that the man that would marry me would have 2 times his wealth. And for my father to think about it, it means such a man exists. All I have to do is to wait patiently. Very soon, you will see. Adese said nothing. She only nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Onama's brothers had tried to talk to her many times. They begged her to behave better and stop chasing away good suitors. But after many failed attempts, they got tired and gave up. Her mothers too had spoken to her. They talked, advised, prayed, warned, threatened. But nothing was working. In fact, it was like pouring water on a rock. Onama did not listen. Her heart was full of pride and her ears were locked. So in the end, they all left her alone. Then one day, something happened. It was the 4th Eke market day, and as usual, the village was preparing for the big feast to celebrate Agba, the god of the rock. People came from all over to join the celebration as usual, and the square was filled with music, laughter and dancing. But then there was one remarkable visitor that day, someone no one had ever seen before. He arrived in what looked like a chariot, pulled by 2 fine horses. He was escorted by several foot soldiers who marched beside him, creating a path for him through the crowd. And then when he stepped out of the chariot, he was dressed in expensive embroidered clothes. His body was covered in golden ornaments that sparkled in the sun. He looked like a king, someone with great wealth and power. The crowd stopped what they were doing and stared in awe, wondering who this man could be. Among the people watching and wondering was Onama. The moment she saw him, she was completely taken by his presence. She turned to her Adese and whispered, "This is exactly the kind of man I'm talking about. I told you such a man exists. A man who commands respect when he walks in. Everyone notices him." And surprisingly, the man noticed Onama too. Of course, it was not hard to notice her. Her beauty shone in the sun, and she was dressed in the finest clothes. Her coral beads and gold jewelry sparkled as she moved. Everyone admired how beautiful she looked. Onama and the strange man kept exchanging looks. Every time their eyes met, Onama felt a flutter in her chest, like a dog feeling happy when its belly is rubbed. She blushed and whispered to Adese, "I can feel it in my spirit, Adese. This man is going to be my husband." Adaeze, surprised, asked her, "But Onama, you've never seen this man before or even spoken to him. How do you know he's the one?" Onama hissed, "It doesn't matter where he's from or who he is or if I had even seen or know him before. All that matters is that he has the life that I deserve." Soon the feast came to an end, and Onama returned home, her heart still racing from the mysterious man. But as fate would have it, just a few moments after she arrived home, the fine carriage with 2 fine horses pulled up in front of her father's house. The man she had been admiring from afar stepped out of the carriage. It was him. Onama couldn't believe her eyes. He walked up to her brothers and introduced himself as Prince Ogugwa from Oboduko Kingdom. He told them how he had noticed Onama at the feast and how he wanted to marry her. Her brothers were surprised. "I'm sorry, my prince, but let us ask, how can you come here and say you want to marry a woman you just saw today, a woman you don't even know? And besides, we know nothing about you." The prince smiled. "I know that you know nothing about me, and I know it is surprising that I suddenly just want to marry your sister. But I saw her today, and immediately I set my eyes upon her. My heart told me that she was the one that I have been looking for. I fell in love with her immediately." Her brothers were not satisfied. However, they called Onama in, hoping she would act sensibly and not make a rash decision. But when Onama heard the prince's intentions, she was thrilled. Without thinking twice, she smiled and agreed to marry him right there. Her brothers were stuck on what to do, and so they asked the prince to come back in a few days' time. Prince Ogugwa left with a promise to return with his family for a proper introduction. They let him leave. At least it would give them enough time to talk sense into Onama. As soon as he left, Onama's brothers pulled her aside. They told her she could not marry him. He was a stranger and they did not know anything about him or his family. They tried to make her understand that she couldn't make such an important decision based on one meeting. But Onama was stubborn. "I will marry him," she said defiantly. "Whether anyone likes it or not, I will marry Prince Ogugwa. And if you try to stop me, I will either run away with him or end my life." Her brothers became worried. Something about this so-called Prince Ogugwa did not sit right with them, and so they decided to investigate. They set out on a long journey to Oboduko, the village the man claimed he came from. Oboduko was far away from Ohere, but the brothers were determined to find the truth, and so they made the journey on their horses. When they finally arrived and asked around, they were shocked by what they found. Nobody in Oboduko had ever heard of Prince Ogugwa. In fact, no one by the description of him had ever come close to Oboduko. There was no royal family with that name. There was no rich man by that description. In other words, the man did not exist. The brothers were now deeply troubled. They hurried back to Ohere with heavy hearts. As soon as they returned home, they called Onama and sat her down. The eldest among them looked her in the eyes and said, "Onama, We went to Oboduku, and that man you want to marry is not from there. No one knows him. In fact, he does not exist in Oboduku. He lied to us." But Onama did not take it well. She exploded in anger. "You all are just trying to destroy my chances of marrying the kind of man I want. You are jealous. Jealous that he's twice as rich as you will ever be." Her eldest brother stood up in anger and shouted, "Enough! Onama, whether you like it or not, we will never allow you to marry a man that no one knows, especially a liar who pretended to be a prince. He could be anything. He could even be a ghost. Who knows?" But Onama was not moved. She crossed her arms and raised her chin. "That man is exactly the kind of husband my father would have chosen for me. The kind of man who can give me the life that I deserve. I will marry him with or without your blessings." Her mother came to speak gently to her. She held her hand and tried to talk some sense into her, hoping to remind her of all they had taught her while growing up. But Onama snapped and turned everything against her mother. "You are such an hypocrite, mother. You went ahead and married a wealthy man, didn't you? And now that I want to do the same, you don't want me to be happy. You want me to suffer and miss my chances because you are bitter." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. She stood up quietly and walked away. At that moment, everyone in the family gave up on Onama. Her heart had become like stone, and her mind seemed to have been made up. Finally, the big day arrived. And just as he promised, Prince Ogugwa came with his entourage, a group of well-dressed men and a few elders. They brought along expensive gifts that made everyone in Ohere talk. They were richly embroidered clothes, shiny gold jewelry, rare coral beads, sweet-smelling oils, and the fattest ram anyone had ever seen. The villagers quickly gathered around, watching with wide eyes. Whispers filled the air. Who was this powerful prince that had come for Onama? Onama stood proudly in her most beautiful attire, her body covered in gold and coral beads. Her heart was beating fast with excitement. Her prince had come. She smiled as he stepped down from his fine carriage. This, she believed, was the beginning of her dream life. But inside, she was uneasy. Something did not feel right. She knew her brothers too well. They had been acting strangely since. So she quietly walked to the back of the house, tiptoed to the room where the marriage negotiations were taking place, and placed her ears close to the window. To her shock and annoyance, she heard her brothers rejecting Prince Ogugwa. Even worse, they were telling him to leave with his gifts. What? Onama gasped. Her heart burned with anger. Without thinking twice, she ran off to her room, packed a few of her belongings, and sneaked out through the back, making sure no one saw her. She ran straight to the only road that led out of Ohere and waited. Not long after, Prince Ogugwa's carriage came rolling down the road. When he saw Onama standing there waiting, he smiled to himself. One way or another, he thought, I still got what I came for, and for free. Onama, full of excitement and dreams of a rich, sweet life, climbed into the carriage. She was ready for her new beginning. But as they traveled, things started to feel strange. Prince Ogugwa did not smile at her. He did not speak kindly. In fact, he did not look at her at all. Throughout the journey, he stared straight ahead, saying nothing. Was Onama bothered? No. She said to herself, what do I need a smile for when I'm going to enjoy all the riches of life? But as the hours passed and the road stretched, her joy turned into worry. They had been traveling the whole day, yet they had not reached his village. She turned to ask him, where are we going, my prince? His answer was cold. Don't worry, you will soon see. They continued. Evening turned into night, and it was already very dark when they finally stopped. Onama stepped down from the carriage and looked around. She saw a well-lit building. It wasn't like the usual mud houses she was used to, but it was hard to tell what it was made of. Still, it was the biggest house she had ever seen, even bigger than her father's and the king's palace in Oheri. She stood there, dreaming of her new rich life, when suddenly 2 strong men grabbed her. She screamed in shock, trying to pull away. What is the meaning of this? How dare you filthy men touch me? Let me go this instant, or else. Bah! A heavy slap landed on her face, loud and painful, enough to spin her eyes around. Her words disappeared from her throat. Her head spun. She was too shocked to cry. Before she could recover from that one, the men dragged her roughly into a small hut nearby, threw her inside and locked the door from outside. Onama sat on the floor, stunned. Her cheek burned. Her gold beads were scattered. Her heart was racing. She looked around. Prince Ogugwa was nowhere to be found. The hut was dark and smelt of old dust. She touched her face again and felt the pain. Suddenly, the truth started to slowly creep in. She had run away from home, disobeyed her family, and followed a man she barely knew. And now, she was locked up in this tiny room like a common prisoner. She had no idea where she was, no one to help her, and no clue what would happen next. But one thing was clear. She knew that she was in serious trouble. Just how bad it was, she was about to find out. Morning came, and the small wooden door creaked open. Standing at the door was Prince Ogugwa. Onama quickly jumped to her feet. My prince, what is happening? Why am I locked in here like some common prisoner? Without saying a word, the prince raised his hand and gave her a hard, backhanded slap across the face. The force threw her straight to the ground. Were you not taught to greet people? He shouted. From now on, anytime you see me, you will go down on your knees, bow your head, and greet me properly like the servants you are. Still on the floor, Onama burst into tears. Please, I want to go home. The prince laughed loudly. The home you ran away from? There is no going back now. This is your home until I find what to do with you or someone willing to pay a good price for you. He turned and stormed out, leaving her in tears. That was the moment reality hit Onama like a thunder. She had walked into the lion's den by herself with her own 2 feet. And the worst part, no one knew where she was. No one was coming to save her. She cried and cried until her eyes could cry no more. Her voice was gone, and only her silent sobs filled the room. Not long after the prince left, the door opened again. The same two hefty men who had dragged her in the night before entered. Onama looked at them with fear, her body still sore. This time she did not struggle, she did not scream or fight. She followed them like a lamb, being led to the slaughter. They took her to another building, not fancy, but much better than the small hut she had slept in. Inside the room were about 12 beautiful young maidens, all dressed up, looking lost and tired. There were also two older women, both silent and serious. The men handed Onama over to them. Arrange the meetings. Our master will see them in 30 minutes, one of the men said. The women nodded quietly. They did not ask Onama any questions. They simply cleaned her up, dressed her in fine wrappers, added coral beads and shiny jewelry, just like the ones the other maidens were wearing. And still, without saying a word, they led her and the others out of the room. They were taken to a grand mansion, a place far more beautiful and bigger than even the king's palace in Owerri. It was the building she had seen the night before. The maidens were lined up neatly in a row, waiting. And then he came, the man everyone knew as the master, the same man Onama once called Prince Ogugwa. He sat on a high chair and looked at them one by one. He waved his hand and each maiden stepped forward, walking slowly in front of him, like they were being displayed. When it got to Onama's turn, he smiled wickedly. He had been waiting for this moment. You, he said, pointing at her, will warm my bed tonight. Get ready and look your best. But Onama's pride still burned inside her. She raised her head and shouted, Never! I will not be warming your bed tonight or any other night. Take me back home this instant. I am Onama, the daughter of the great chief Ibago, and no man will treat me like a mere servant. The other maidens stared at her with wide eyes. No one had ever dared to speak to the master like that. The man stood up from his chair, his eyes filled with anger. It seems you've not learned anything since you came here. You are now mine, just like everyone else here. You are my property, and you will do as I say. Onama stood firm. No, I do not belong to anyone. The master's face turned red with rage. Guards! He shouted. Immediately, the two hefty men appeared again. Teach her some manners, he ordered. They dragged Onama back to the small hut and gave her the beating of her life. They whipped her and flogged her until she cried and begged for mercy. Then they threw her on the floor and locked the door again. Lying there in pain, Onama wept bitterly. She thought of her mother, her brothers. She thought about her proud ways, her stubbornness, and her refusal to listen. Now she was in a strange place, treated like an animal, even worse than an animal, with no one to call for help. To make matters worse, she was hungry, very hungry. She had not eaten anything since the day before, Her stomach growled, but there was nothing to eat, no water to drink. She spent the rest of the day and night on the cold floor, alone, in pain, with no hope in sight. The next day, the two hefty men returned and dragged her out again. They took her back to the same room where the other maidens were. When she entered, the girls looked at her with sad eyes. Her body was covered in bruises and marks from the beating. She looked weak and tired, like someone who had been crushed. But none of them spoke. No one tried to comfort her because, come to think of it, they were all living the same nightmare. They had no comfort to give. Onama's lips were dry, her stomach was empty, and she could barely stand. Her body was dirty and sticky. Thankfully, the elderly women who worked there were not like the guards. They were silent. They had never said a word, but their actions showed a little kindness. One of them, seeing her condition, sent for food and water. Onama grabbed the plate hungrily and ate quickly, then drank the water like someone who had been in the desert. After she had eaten, they cleaned her up, dressed her again in fine wrappers and beautiful jewelry, just like before. Then without a word, they led her and the other maidens out. Again, they were taken to the ground house, and again they were paraded like goods for sale. And again, the master chose Onama. But this time, she had learned her lesson. She did not argue. She did not shout. She did not resist. That night became the worst night of her life. It was her first time, and never had she imagined that it would go like this. The man who once smiled and acted like a prince became a monster behind closed doors. He was brutal, treated her like an object, used her however he wanted. She cried the whole time, but he seemed to enjoy it. She saw the wicked satisfaction on his face as he had his way with her. She lay still, hot tears rolling down her cheeks as she endured the pain she was going through. And when he was done, he rolled off her, yawned and said, "Get lost." She quickly jumped up from the bed, picked up her clothes, dressed up and left his room. Outside the door, one of the elderly women was waiting. Still, she did not say a word. She simply took Onama by the hand and led her back to the women's quarters. There she gave her a bitter concoction to drink to prevent pregnancy. After which she helped her clean up and then pointed to a small sleeping corner. The bed was not big, but it was far better than the cold floor she had slept on the nights before. That night, Onama lay on her small bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Never in her life had she been treated this way. Back in Oheri, she had power over men. She had turned down rich suitors, mocked others, and carried herself way too high. Now, here she was, treated far worse than a slave, living like a prisoner in a place far from home, a place where no one knew. She cried silently, but as she cried, she suddenly heard a voice. Crying will not solve anything. It will only make you sick, and you don't want to be sick here. Startled, Onama opened her eyes. Sitting on the bed beside hers was one of the maidens she had seen earlier. What did you say?" Onoma asked in a soft voice. The girl leaned closer, speaking in a hushed tone. Crying is useless here, and so is stubbornness. Onoma looked confused. What do you mean? The girl gave her a weak smile. I admired your courage yesterday. It made me to really like you. But I must tell you the truth. If you want to survive here, then you must hide that courage deep inside. The more stubborn you are, the faster he will sell you off. And you have no idea what awaits you somewhere else. Onoma's eyes widened. What? The girl nodded. Yes, he sells the girls who are too hard to control. He has rich friends in other villages who buy them. If no one wants you, then you are sent to the fields to work as a slave. And that's not even the worst part. Anyone who falls sick is either shot, buried, or thrown into the big river and left to die. It all depends on the master's mood on that particular day. Onoma's mouth fell open in shock. Tears filled her eyes again. What have I gotten myself into? Shh, the girl said gently. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I just want to help you to stay alive. I've been here for 3 months now, and I've been planning my escape. I think I found a way out, but I need to build more trust before I try it. I need to wait for the right time. And when the time comes, you can come with me, but you must act smart. Gain the master's trust. If he stops watching you closely, then we can move quietly. Onoma nodded slowly. Finally, a small light in her darkness. The girl smiled and whispered, My name is Dimma. Onoma was curious. Dimma, how did you get here? Dimma sighed. I was born into a very poor family, the first child of 7, all born by different men and abandoned by all. Then one day, this man shows up in our village and said he was a prince. He noticed me in the market, and before I knew it, he had trailed me home. He told my mother he wanted to marry me, and she did not think twice. Seeing how wealthy he was, she agreed. I cried and pleaded with her, but she did not care. Long story short, I was forced to marry him, and here I am. Onoma looked at her with pity. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Dimma was surprised. You are also here in the same situation. It's pointless feeling sorry for me. Onoma nodded. That's true, but our stories are different. You were forced to be here, but I came willingly. In fact, I disobeyed my brothers and my mother and ran away with him. He was wealthy, just the kind of man I wanted. I did not bother to see any other thing. Now look at me. The servants in my father's house are far better than me now. Even the animals on our fields are treated better. We wear all these beautiful clothes and jewelries, but our lives are gone. The two girls cried together silently and comforted each other afterwards. Before they went to bed, Dimma warned her, Listen, during the day, we can't speak to each other. If they notice we are close, they will separate us or sell one of us. No one is allowed to have friends here. Onoma nodded again, wiping her tears. That night, though her body was still in pain, her heart was still heavy. She fell asleep feeling something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. Meanwhile, back in Oheri, Onoma's brothers and the entire village had searched everywhere for her. They searched every bush, every path, every hidden corner of the village, and even the surrounding villages. But there was no sign of Onama. Her mother cried day and night. Her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse. Even the other wives could not console her. Onama was her only child. Her brothers, however, did not give up. They went with search parties, traveled from village to village in search of their sister, but no one had seen her. At that point, they knew for sure that Onama had done exactly what she said she would do. She had run away with the strange man, and now no one knew where she was. 1 month passed, then 2 months, then 6 months. Still, there was no sign of her. They began to fear the worst. They feared that she was no longer alive. And back in the master's camp, hidden deep in the forest, Onama actually wished she wasn't alive. For 6 months now, every night had been torture. Every night had been a nightmare. She had become the master's favorite toy. It was as if he was devoted to making her suffer. He used her whenever and however he pleased, and at any time of the day. She had no choice. She had learned that refusing meant beatings, hunger, or worse. Sometimes, just to survive and be on his good side, she even pretended to enjoy it, just so that the master would let his guard down and maybe get tired of her. Her only comfort, the only hope she held onto, was the plan she had with Dimma to escape one day. But that day did not look like it was coming. Every night after the horror was over, Onama would lie on her small bed and stare at the ceiling. She would think about her life in Ohiri, the things she had said, the people she had hurt. She remembered the men who had truly loved her, especially byVee, and she had humiliated him terribly. She remembered her friend Adeze and her brothers. She wished she had listened to them. She thought about her mother. Oh, her sweet mother. Every time her mother's face came to her mind, tears flowed. I did not just disobey them. I broke their hearts, she whispered to herself. Every single day, every single night, Onama prayed for one thing. Let me escape this place. Let me live again. Then one night, their chance finally came. The master had tired of the same faces. He wanted fresh blood. He wanted someone new, another innocent girl. He prepared for a long journey that night with his guards. He planned to travel to a faraway land and arrive by first light before the market began. He took almost all his men with him, leaving behind only a few soldiers to watch the camp. He was confident that nothing would go wrong. He had everyone there, exactly where he wanted them to be. That night was the night Dimma had been waiting for. It was finally time to strike. That night, after the master and most of his men had left for the journey, the camp was unusually quiet. Only a few guards remained behind, and those ones, they did not look very alert. Some were already dozing off, while others sat round a small fire, eating and chatting and drinking happily. It was also a free day for them. There was no master to control them, to watch them and tell them what to do. Dimma knew that this was exactly the moment she needed. The guards drank until they zoned off. She waited until their voices faded and knew that they were all knocked out. It was time. She rose quietly from her bed and gave Onama a small tap. Then she placed a finger over her lips. Shh, it's time. Onama knew exactly what she meant. Her heart was beating fast. Her hands trembled, but she nodded. She was ready. The two girls wrapped themselves in old, dark clothes, different from the bright wrappers they usually wore. Then they crawled out silently through the back door of the women's quarters. Once outside, they stayed flat on their stomachs, using the long grasses to hide in case there was a guard somewhere around. Fortunately for them, the gods were clearly watching over them because no guard was seen anywhere around. They crawled slowly, quietly, until they reached the back fence made of thick bamboo sticks. Dimma had a small knife and quickly she set to work. She cut the rope, securing one of the poles to the others, and within 10 minutes, she had loosened one of the bamboo poles, just enough to make a narrow opening. She turned to Onama and whispered, "We go now. Once we are through, we run. No looking back." They squeezed through the narrow gap and slipped into the dark forest beyond. For the first few minutes, they ran as fast as they could, their bare feet brushing against leaves, sticks, stones. The forest was thick and dark. Even the moon did not shine that night. When they were far enough and the camp lights had disappeared behind them, they stopped to catch their breath. Onama fell to her knees, panting. "We made it. We made it. We made it." She couldn't believe it. Dimma shook her head. "We are not safe yet, Onama. We have to move fast. By morning, they will notice we are gone, and we must go as far as possible away from here before then." Onama looked around, as if suddenly realizing where she was. Fear gripped her. "Dimma, what if we died here? This is a forest. There are lots of dangerous things lurking around in the dark." Dimma gave her a firm look. "If we stayed at the camp, we will meet a worse fate. This is our only chance. If we make it alive, then the gods be praised. But if we die here, then we died trying." Onama nodded, but she was still deeply terrified. And just like that, they picked themselves up and disappeared deeper into the forest, swallowed by the bushes. They walked, ran, limped until their feet could carry them no more. They had to sit under a big tree to rest their feet and catch their breath. They were still trying to breathe when they heard a rustling movement in the bushes. Dimma sat up alert. "Did you hear that?" Onama had heard it too. Their hearts started beating very fast. They jumped to their feet, ready to take flight. The bushes rustled again, and immediately, one pair of bright eyes appeared, glowing in the dark. No one needed to tell them what it was. It was a very, very hungry leopard. All the pain and tiredness they felt vanished. Immediately, they turned on their heels and took off, screaming their lungs out. They ran as fast as they could. But Onama was not fast and strong enough. She was tired. Her legs wobbled beneath her. She fell, screaming Dimma's name. Dimma turned in time to see the leopard jumping on top of Onama. Her eyes widened in shock as she screamed. And almost immediately, they heard a gunshot, and the animal's lifeless body fell to the ground. From behind the trees, a tall man stepped out holding a gun, still pointed toward the fallen leopard. The girls turned to see their savior, and both their eyes widened in surprise. It was a hunter. "Are you wounded?" the hunter asked. Onama shook her head, and then she paused. She knew that voice. She looked closely at their savior. Lo and behold, it was byVee. Yes, byVee. Her own byVee. The same man she had once insulted and mocked in front of everyone. Onama gasped, too stunned to speak. The man looked at Onama in confusion. "byVee," Onama whispered. byVee looked at her, his face suddenly full of surprise. He did not recognize the face because it was dark, but he knew that voice. Oh, he knew that voice even if he was sleeping. "Onama," he said slowly. "Onama, is that you? What are you doing here? You are alive. The whole village, everyone has been searching for you." For a moment, no one spoke. Then byVee's expression softened. He bent down, picked up his hunting bag and said, "Follow me." He led them carefully through the forest, watching every corner with his sharp hunter's eyes. Soon they reached a small shelter made of palm leaves and sticks. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, safe. Inside, byVee gave them small pieces of roasted meat and a calabash of water. The girls ate grateful. Their bodies were tired, but their hearts were slowly filling with hope again. Then byVee asked again, "How did you get here, Onama?" After a few moments of silence, Onama spoke. She looked up at byVee, her voice quiet and shaky. "I am so ashamed of myself, byVee. I was stubborn, proud, and disobedient." She told him everything, how she had run away with the stranger she thought was a prince, even when her family warned her against going with him, and how she ended up in a horrible place, locked up and used like a slave. "I wish I listened, byVee. I was too full of myself and too focused on his wealth. And look where it landed me. That place is horrible. That place is terrible. I would have died there if not for Dimma here. She saved me." As she spoke, tears flowed down her cheeks. But she didn't hold back. She let it all out. Her pride was gone. byVee listened quietly, his eyes filled with pain and anger. But he did not say, "I told you so." He didn't remind her of the past. The past belonged where it was, in the past. Instead, he gently said, "It's okay. You are safe now. You both were brave to run. But having heard all these things, we can't stay here long. We must leave before first light. They will definitely come looking for you." The girls nodded. byVee let them rest for a while, and then they set out again. He led the way, while the two girls followed closely behind, hearts beating, but this time not from fear, but from the hope. By the first light of morning, they were far, far away from the forest, far away from the nightmare they had escaped. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the master had returned from his trip earlier than anticipated. When he heard that two of his girls had escaped, he flew into a terrible rage. "What? How? When?" he shouted. The guards tried to explain, but they had no reasonable explanation to give. The master became more furious. "Kill them all! he ordered. And just like that, all the guards who had been left behind were put to death for failing in their duty. His advisor quickly tried to salvage the situation. "Master, we should send search parties. These girls could still be found if we act quickly." But the master refused. He waved his hand and said coldly, "There is no need. The forest is too big and dangerous. There are animals, spirits, and bandits everywhere. They are dead already by now. Let them rot." And with that, the matter was closed. To him, Onama and Dimma were gone, dead, and forgotten. By then, Onama and Dimma were well on their way to Ohiri. It took them 2 days to reach home. Along the way, they stopped in a few villages to rest and get food. Nwabwife made sure no one noticed them too much. He knew it was important to keep moving quietly. The journey was long and tiring, but finally, they arrived. When the villagers saw Onama walking beside Nwabwife, with Dimma close behind, there was a moment of silence. No one could believe it. Then someone shouted her name. "Onama! Hey, people gather! Onama is back!" Boom! In seconds, the whole village started to gather. By the time they reached her father's compound, there was already a crowd. Her mother came out, took one look at her daughter and fell to the ground, crying for joy. "My child, my daughter, you are alive! Oh, the gods be praised!" Her brothers rushed forward, laughing, shouting, lifting her into the air. There was joy everywhere. There was dancing, there was clapping, and tears flowing left and right. That very evening, her family slaughtered goats and chickens, and the villagers gathered to celebrate. A feast was thrown. The songs of thanksgiving filled the air. For the first time in a long time, Onama smiled, seeing the kind of love her people were showing her, even though she had been a very terrible person to them. Dimma was not left out of the celebration. The people of Ohiri welcomed her warmly. After they heard how she had saved their Onama, she had no family to go back to, except her mother, who had shamelessly married her off to the master because of the wealth that she was promised. And so she decided to remain in Ohiri. The people here looked peaceful and welcoming, and truly they welcomed her with open arms. Onama's brothers gave her room in their home. Somehow she had now become a part of their own family. A few days later, when Onama's 15 brothers heard the full story of what their sister had endured, they were filled with rage. They could not sit still. They gathered together, all 15 of them, and went to the warriors of Ohiri. Together they formed a secret alliance with the brave fighters from neighboring villages. For 3 weeks they made plans and trained. And then, one dark night, when the master least expected it, the warriors struck. They attacked the camp with fire and arrows, swords and spears. The guards fought back, but they were no match for the anger and the strength of those who had come for justice. The master was killed, struck down like the beast that he was. Most of his guards were also killed, while some, who were wise enough, dropped their weapons and ran for their lives. Over 80 women, both young and old, were rescued that night, and the place was burned to the ground, turned to ashes. As for Onama and Nwabwife, their story did not end there. The love that Nwabwife had for Onama had not diminished, even after the way she had ridiculed him. After her return, Nwabwife made sure to check up on her every single day. He told himself that he just wanted to make sure that she was well. But deep in his heart, he knew that he could never let go of how he felt about her. Onama herself was not blind. Even though Nwabwife did not say so, she knew that he still loved her, and it puzzled her. It surprised her. She could not understand it. One day when he came again, she decided to ask him, "I don't understand you, Nwabwife," she said. "Why are you being so nice to me after the way I treated you? After I humiliated you, why are you so good to me?" Nwabwife shook his head. "I don't know how to be any other way, Onama. Yes, you deeply hurt me. Yes, I was heartbroken. I was humiliated. But you have gone through much worse than I would wish on my enemy. I've always loved you, Onama, and I have accepted that you cannot be with me. You cannot be with a person like me, and that's okay. But that does not mean that I should become a heartless person." Onama burst into tears. "I'm so sorry, Nwabwife. I'm sorry. I was so foolish, proud, full of myself, and I deserved exactly what I got. I had a good man in front of me and I treated him like trash. Please forgive me, Nwabwife." Nwabwife held her hands. "I have already forgiven you, Onama. And if I had the chance, I would spend every single day taking away all the pain that you have been through all these months." Onama shook her head. "Nwabwife, I cannot be with you. I cannot be with a man like you." Nwabwife cut her short. "I know that already, Onama. I know I don't fit into your class. I know that I don't..." No, Onama interrupted him. "It's not that. Nwabwife, you're a good man. You deserve better. I am nothing now, Nwabwife. I am nothing. You deserve a good woman whose heart is as good as yours. I am not worthy to be with a man like you. Look at me. I am no longer the woman you used to know. I am defiled and dirty. You are too good for me." Nwabwife looked her straight into the eyes. "Onama, let me be the one to decide that. Let me be the one to decide that you are too dirty for me. Let me be the one to decide that I deserve better. Onama Loma." That day was the start of something new between Nwabwife and Onama. True to his words, he showed her nothing but love. And even though some people frowned at it, he went ahead to make Onama his wife. Onama left her past life and status behind in her father's house and embraced her new life with her husband. She had learned a bitter lesson, and so had the other young maidens in Ohiri. Moral lessons. Number 1. Pride always goes before a fall. Number 2. Not all that glitters are gold. Number 3. No matter how filthy a sinner you are, no matter how dirty you think you are, remember that God loves you and His love is boundless and unconditional. Thank you for watching. If there's something else you learned, let us know in the comment section. Don't learn alone. Take my leave now. See you in my next video. Bye.